Hi, welcome everybody, and thanks. It was such a great session on early childhood education and such a nice video to help you copy, paste, and advocate for global education around the world. Visit key.theirworld.org to learn more about the project. I'm so excited for this next panel. My name is Justin Van Fleet. I'm the president of Theirworld and the executive director of the Global Business Coalition for Education. And we've heard so much today about parents, students, teachers, families, communities struggling to get back to school, struggling to close the digital divide. And at the same time, we know that many countries and communities are facing budget cuts around the world. And so this panel, we're going to explore that very issue of funding education. And I'm so thrilled to have such a great panel that's going to help us explore how much it will cost and how we'll mobilize those resources. We have Baroness Sugg, CBE, who's the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State and the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Girls' Education at the United Kingdom with us. We have Franz, Fayot, the Minister for Development Cooperation and Humanitarian Affairs in Luxembourg. We have Vice President Mamta Murthi, Vice President for Human Development at the World Bank. And we also have Sarah Musau with us, and she's the Theirworld Global Youth Ambassador from Kenya. And I think maybe to kick this off, I would love to go to you, Mamta, and just hear from the World Bank's perspective. We're facing this crisis. How much money will we need to end the global education crisis? Has COVID set us off track? And if you're talking to sort of presidents and prime ministers around the world, how would you convince them to make that an investment priority? So could you sort of give us the landscape and the lay of the land in terms of financing education?
Thank you, Justin. We're indeed facing an unprecedented crisis in education, at the root of which are two massive shocks. First, the school closures that have left most students on the planet out of school. And second, the massive economic contraction, which has resulted in a decline in family incomes and government budgets for education, as you've already mentioned. Now, this double shock has massively altered the landscape for education financing. And this is for two reasons. The pandemic has actually increased the costs of delivering education while schools are closed. For example, investments need to be made in remote learning. And then there are significant additional costs associated with reopening schools and bringing children back into schools safely, especially girls, and making up for lost learning. At the same time, government revenues have contracted, and so have external resources of financing. And so put together, this is really a perfect storm. And we run the danger of losing the education of an entire generation, and we simply cannot let this happen. Now, to come to your question about, what is the price tag? What is the amount of money we need? Well, there are lots of estimates out there, many of which were done before the pandemic, but they're all in the right ballpark. And if anything, they might underestimate the resources that are needed. And so if I were talking to a Minister of Finance or the Prime Minister, I would say that this is an investment which needs to be made if a country needs to grow, investment in the human potential of the population. And while the resource needs are high, there is a lot that can be done right now. First of all, resources for education and for frontline delivery of services can be protected even during a downturn. And if there is scope for a fiscal stimulus, then education can be prioritized within those fiscal stimulus expenditures. That's the first thing. The second thing that can be done is that the spending that goes into education can be made more effective. In fact, the best way of advocating for protecting resources or adding resources is by saying, well, these resources are used very effectively. And then finally, I would say that in the international community and international financial institutions like ourselves can lean forward at a time like this. And that's what we're trying to do. At the World Bank, we have provided about 5 billion additional commitments since COVID struck for education, and we intend to do the same in the coming 12 months. So with that, let me hand it back to you, Justin.
Great. No, I think that's a really great way to lay this out. This is issue of protecting funding and prioritizing it in stimulus packages, spending much more effectively to show that we're getting results for the money that we're using, and then having individuals and countries lean forward with their investments and front-loading education investments. And it's a really good segue maybe to go over to Baroness Sugg and hear a bit, as a representative of a donor country in education, what are some of the ways that you think we could fund education, create new streams of finance, and could we count on the UK to sort of do this leaning forward that the Vice President just discussed?
Thanks, Justin. As Mamta said, investing in education is going to be really critical if we want to build back better from COVID-19. We're all facing tough economic times, both donor and partner governments. And I think it's really important that donors innovate and that they seize opportunities. And I think it's fair to say that the education sector has been quite slow in this regard, particularly when we look at some of the incredible things the health sector's done. One of the really good examples, I think, of some innovation is the International Finance Facility for Education, IFED, which really has got big potential to help us leverage additional education finance in the context of overstretched age budgets. And it's going to offer new affordable financing for education in lower middle-income countries, where we know that over 60% of children cannot read a basic text by the age of 10. And IFED's a great example of a way for donors to help their money go further. For every pound that donors invest, IFED can leverage £4 of additional finance for education. But to be frank, we've got to get others supporting us on this. Some have been a bit slow to support, and we need the World Bank and we need other donors to get behind this and to get behind this now. We also need to leverage in more private sector finance. We're doing exciting work on innovative education outcome funds in Ghana and Sierra Leone. And it's really important that we all coordinate our activities and pool our financial efforts to make sure that education multilaterals can really fulfill their distinct mandates to the benefit of all children. So ECW, Champion Education in Emergencies, the Global Partnership for Education, Transforming Education in Low-Income Countries, and IFED, mobilising additional educational resources in lower middle-income countries. The UK is really proud that we're the lead bilateral donor to all of those three, but we'd be delighted to see ourselves be overtaken by others as donors commit more and more to these really important funds. Thanks, Justin.
Great, thanks, Baroness Sugg, and that's really great. We're proud to know that the UK is our #1 donor, and I'd also agree with you. We'd like to see others overtake you. That would be a great problem for us to have in the international community. And I think that point around innovating, around how do we finance education, coordinating and sort of pooling our funds to really make an impact is really, really important. And maybe what I'd like to do next is go over to Sarah, who's coming to us from Kenya. And she's a Theirworld Global Youth Ambassador there on the grounds in Kenya. Could you just give us a sense of what is the current state of education in Kenya? And if we were able to have more donors lean forward and invest more in education, what difference would that make in the lives of children in a country like yours?
Thank you, Justin. First, let me start by saying we still have a long way to go in Kenya, especially for the marginalized communities, children in rural areas, girls, children with disabilities. And as it stands, we have 1 million children out of school in Kenya. And with COVID-19 disruption, we have 17 million learners affected. Now, just take a second and imagine what crisis this is. In 2015, Kenya government invested $3 billion in education. But even if this doubles to $6 billion in 2025, we'll still be short of the funding needed to achieve SDG 4. Aid is currently 5% of the gap. Now, for us, having this facility will help us get more children to school. And especially those who are from marginalized communities, children with disabilities, children from rural areas, girls, and also support Kenya's growing economy. Thank you, Justin.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for giving us those insights from the ground. And it's really interesting to hear that even if Kenya itself invests double the amount of money it's doing, it still won't be enough. So these resources coming in from other countries can really be beneficial and can make such a difference in the lives of young people. And I love that point about the most marginalized young people, children with disabilities, children with special needs, and reaching out to those communities. And this is a great way that we can do it and sort of show solidarity and support during some of these difficult times that we're facing. Minister Fayot, I'll turn over to you in Luxembourg, and thanks so much for joining us today. And I'm curious, as we look at your development strategy in the country, why is it that education is important to that? And what would you like to do as Luxembourg to sort of keep education on the agenda of your international development policies?
Well, Justin, very happy to be on this panel. Education has always been one of the key pillars of our general development cooperation strategies since we started basically in the 1980s. We always recognized that education was about empowerment, about giving a critical mind, and also about skills. And so we were very strong investors in vocational training on a multilateral level, but also in our partner countries. Now, of course, education lies at the heart of our efforts to support the successful implementation, in particular of SDG 4, but also of the General Agenda 2030. It is crucial to state the obvious, to eradicate extreme poverty, promote economic, social and economic sustainability, and in particular, in these times of COVID-19 crisis, we see that at home in our developing countries, that upskilling, reskilling is a crucial point, and it is, I would say, even more crucial in developing countries. We are always try to be very pragmatic in our policies. We, for instance, invest in Cabo Verde, to give just this example, in hotel school training in hotel for hotel staffs, but also training to young people in renewable energies to help job creation in the sectors that are really being developed in our partner countries. And there are many more examples of this type. So I think it's to make it short. I think it's a holistic goal to provide a full education to young people, also with a view to gender equality in all our partner countries, but also obviously education to make young people and less young people fit for a job and fit for the economy in their countries.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Minister. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that you find that education really is the key to unlocking all of these different issues: economic growth, solving a pandemic, job creation, skills. And so I think that's a really important sort of cross-cutting theme that's coming out of what you're saying, is that keeping education as part of your development strategy really unlocks all of these other ambitions and goals that you have and your commitments to the 2030 goals. I'm so happy that this panel was able to bring such important ideas together and also do it very succinctly. We've gotten back on time and back on track with the conference, which is really exciting. So I'm very pleased with that. But these points are so important. So thanks you for all of you for joining us in this particular session, sharing those insights. Just to recap, this idea of innovating in education finance is really important. Protecting and prioritizing education budgets, even during a crisis, spending more effectively and making sure we're getting those results and we're spending where we need to put the money, and that we're leaning forward and really trying to invest more in seeing education as an investment. And as Sarah pointed out, it's an investment particularly in those young, marginalized children who could be falling behind if we don't get them on track. And it really is an upfront investment we need to make for their future. And as the minister said, it really unlocks all of these different areas of development. And that's really what we're getting at the heart of today at this conference, that education is the key to unlocking the potential of the next generation. So at Theirworld, we're going to take Baroness Sugg's challenge up, and we are going to keep pressure up to get more donors to come up and maybe even surpass the United Kingdom in being a big donor to education. You mentioned all of those funds: the Education Cannot Wait Fund, the Global Partnership for Education, and the International Finance Facility for Education, just to name a few. And we're going to coordinate, get funding behind. We've named 10 countries and 10 individuals that can make a change this year in millions of students. And so we're going to run campaigns. I encourage everyone to go to theirworld.org/takeaction to learn more about how you can contact political leaders and make a difference and add your voice to those campaigns. Now, we've talked a bit about this International Finance Facility for Education. So during the next break, we're going to play a short video for everyone that just explains what is the International Finance Facility for Education. But don't go too far, because coming up next, we're going to be joined by broadcaster and best-selling author June Sarpong Obi, We're going to be joined by Gordon Brown, the former UK Prime Minister and UN Special Envoy for Global Education, Henrietta Fore, the Executive Director of UNICEF, and the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed. They'll all be with us in a few minutes. Back to you in the studio and enjoy the IFID video animation up next.
Did you know that even before the coronavirus, there were 260 million children around the world who each and every day weren't going to school? There was a crisis in global education, which will only get worse now because of the pandemic. If we don't act soon, by 2030, more than half of the world's children will not possess the skills they need to find even the most basic work. And how will we find the next generation of doctors and nurses and teachers and engineers if we don't give children everywhere a quality education? Despite being desperate to do the right thing, some countries simply don't have the resources they need. That is where the International Finance Facility for Education comes in. It's a bold new fund aiming to raise at least an extra $5 billion for education in just 5 years, changing the lives of hundreds of millions of children. It works like this. Donor funds are pooled to provide guarantees for multilateral development banks, like the World Bank. The banks then leverage this money to create a larger pool of new funding. Alongside direct grants from donors and with the facility's multiplying effect, this means each dollar in aid pledged unlocks $4 more. Instead of crippling high-interest loans, lower-income countries will receive funds at affordable low rates. Those countries can then provide quality, inclusive learning for millions more young people and introduce long-lasting reforms. This will mean happier, healthier, and more peaceful societies. And that is the key to unlock big change.